Scott. I'm what you get when you order Mike Montero from wish.com. This is my dog. She's a Romanian rescue called Lorna. I fucking love her and you should too. This is really creaky. I'm going to have to stand still and hide behind the lectern. I'm from Liverpool. I'm really proud to be from Liverpool. And in Liverpool, we have a few regional pastimes that I want to share with you. So we talk to strangers at bus stops, which some people find weird, but okay. We fucking hate the Tories. Yeah, good crowd, strong crowd. Good job we're not in fucking Hastings or somewhere. And we really love knocking Chelsea out in the footy. We have a bit of a cultural phenomenon in Liverpool that I want to share just as a bit of an icebreaker. We have a few, to be fair, but one that I really like is, it's called a ketwig. I don't know if anyone knows what it is, but it's essentially this majestic specimen. Yeah, if you want to know more about that, ask Amy Hupe. She's done extensive research on the matter. But what's that slide again? How funny. So like growing up in Liverpool, like in the shadows of Thatcherite austerity and neoliberal exceptionalism, in a city that's historically communal and historically abandoned by successive governments, has kind of instilled a lot of values in me. Things like community, looking out for each other, humility, diversity. So naturally I got a career in tech where there's fucking none of that. Mindful design, as some people might know, because I don't shut the fuck up about it, is my book. And yeah, this isn't going to be like 40 minutes of book promo dressed up as like a really well-delivered, professional, exceptional talk. I don't really like self-promotion. I'm not really good at it. It kind of gives me the ick, but I'm just going to get a drink. As you can see, motion design is my passion. Yeah, if you do want to grab the book, please do. Check it out. It gets my dog treats. Do people fucking use QR codes? I don't know. I'll give a copy away as well partway through this, so buy it at the end if you don't get it. There's also a free toolkit that comes with it. It's all in Figma, for better or worse. It's got things like behavioral interview canvases, empathy maps, a lot of the early stage workshops you might do in a design-led process. So going on to the practical stuff, when Oliver asked me to speak here, he said, Scott, I love your book. Everyone at Pixel Pioneers should buy it. I know that would make you really happy. I've seen you speak about it before. I was wondering if you could do something similar, but just chat less shit and actually give some examples. He was very nice about it, but that's what he meant. So I'm going to do that, but the caveat to this is there's a lot of quite like academic stuff, and there's a lot of quite things that I usually like to do a deep dive on. So this is what we're going to have to roll with. You just have to trust that everything I say is 100% factual and cannot be argued or debated whatsoever. Cool. Let's move on. So some of the kind of like main principles of mindful design and kind of what I want to encourage folks to maybe dive into today. The first one is understand how the mind works. So what makes us tick? How do we process our environments? What motivates us to do the things that we do? And how do we make sense of our world? Essentially, what the fuck is going on up here? Understand how systems work as well. So we want to understand and evaluate the various systems that we need to care about. And we want to reconcile the two. So if we understand people and we understand systems, we can start noticing gaps and looking at how we can bridge those gaps. So is a system inherently complex? Can we abstract it out? Can we simplify it? Is a system inherently unfair? Can it be democratized? Is a system gatekept or is it biased? Spoiler alert, most of them are. Can it be subverted? What needs to change and what impact can we have to go about bridging those gaps? And then contextualize it. The things that we do are contextual to the product that we're making, the project that we're working on, and the problem space that we're exploring. So a general understanding of people and systems is great, but it's much more important to understand that within the context of our goals and our project. It's not uncommon to see early stage generative research, UX research labeled as contextual inquiry. And that means we do things like ethnography, we do things like anthropology, but we're less concerned about global and broad populations, and we're more concerned about things that are specific to our problem space, to the people that inhabit it. And this kind of shows how like kind of the broad design or UX process is somewhat unique. Like if we strip away like a lot of the hubris and the thought leadership and the overthinking that happens in UX. We move away from those weird quims with TikTok accounts that want to teach you how to use Figma in 40 seconds or whatever they're doing on there. We can look at the design process as ostensibly a decision-making framework. Now, that's nothing new, right? The world's complex. There's rubrics all over the place. Like, we need checklists of how to do fucking everything these days. Decision-making frameworks aren't new. But what is a little bit unique about UX and about early stage design is that we put some kind of focus on testing the impact and the efficacy of the decisions that we make. And it gives us a somewhat proven process to go in about doing that. So tip number one, I'm not going to count all the tips because I'm fucking stupid and I can only count to 6. But practical tip number one, and it's a simple one, maintain a project diary. Use your project diary to track decisions. So who made a specific decision? Was it prompted by data? Was it prompted by feedback? What led to that decision being made? Did it come from user tests and generative research, feedback rounds? And track the decisions through the life cycle of your project. Track assumptions. Assumptions are a dirty word in design and in product delivery. And I think that's a little bit unfair. It's fine sometimes to work against assumptions or to work from assumptions. It's not fine to conflate assumptions with facts. So documenting assumptions is healthy. It's not about calling people out. It's about saying, hey, with the data that we have right now, we can't really answer this. We're going to move forward based on an assumption, and we're going to see how it plays out. Sometimes just shipping something is the best way to evaluate it. And it's not necessarily a red flag if you run into that kind of stuff. But when you do eventually evaluate and you realize that, hey, that assumption we made was wrong, you want to be able to track the decisions you made off the back of that and maybe go and revisit some of them. In the same vein, track the risks. Assumptions are one type of risk, but there's a bunch of risks that you take on board. We are encouraged often to de-risk as much as possible. Sometimes that slows us down. Fast-paced environments like startups kind of need to be a little bit comfortable with taking some risks. So your project diary will give you some degree of accountability. If you normalize being open with tracking decisions and stuff like that, then if you make a decision that generates work for yourself, you should be accountable to that. Other people should be accountable to the decisions that they make. It helps us document our project and our process. It helps us look at how we've iterated, how things have changed over time. Really good if you're working on a long-term product with multiple rounds of iteration and you're onboarding new people. They can get to grips with that quite quickly. And it also helps us answer this question, which is probably the question I get the most, is why did you? Or sometimes people are nice and they say, why did we? When they really mean, why did you? But why did this happen? So like a scenario, it was, say, Peter, the product manager, send you a very panicked message on Slack on a Saturday morning, because that's when they love sending messages. And he says, what the fuck? We're getting sued because our product's not accessible. How did we ever let this happen? You just go through your project diary and you can say, well, Peter, on the 14th of August, you said growth is far more important than accessibility to us right now. So it's your fucking fault. Sit down. Make it collaborative if you really want to go into that openness and that transparency. Make it collaborative, make it centralized, and catch up regularly with other folks if you are keeping a centralized and collaborative project diary. Compare notes, make sure that, hey, like, is this correct? Did we actually decide on this, or did I fall asleep halfway through a Zoom call? Cool. So jumping into the mindful design kind of things, how the mind works. We're going to look at that first, looking at attention and distraction. So how do our attentional systems work? What happens when we are faced with distractions? And this is best done with an example. And this example was best done with audio, but fuck me, go. So I want you to imagine that you're working in a busy coffee shop or any kind of noisy environment. Could be that adult creche that people call a WeWork. Are they still going? I don't know. But there's lots of noise and there's lots of stimuli around. There would have been noise on those speakers. There's conversations. There's the smell of coffee. There's people coming to and fro. There's the clinking of cups and plates. But there's a decent chance that you were able to kind of sit down and focus, even with all that going on. You're able to sit there, you're drawing some rectangles, you're ignoring product managers on Slack. Life is good. And the stimuli around you are kind of just bled into this background noise. So this is what's known as a task positive state. And this is essentially a state of focus. So our conscious attention is directed towards the thing that we're working on. And all these unrelated stimuli are just blurred into periphery. Now, let's say, whoa, it worked. Okay, there's a very loud crash. Some pricks dropped a plate. It's really likely that if you're not hearing impaired, that you snap to the source of that noise because, what the fuck, it's just surprised you, it startled you. You've looked over to it. Some fella's dropped a whole tray of cortados. He's covered in coffee. He's got scrambled eggs in his man bun. He's having a shit day. And this is a startled reflex. And this is innate to us. This is an evolutionary imperative. It helps keep us alive. But there's another side to the two distractions that I think is a lot more interesting. And that's kind of the emotional side of distraction. So let's say man bun's gone, everything's cleared up, you're back, you're focused, best rectangles you've ever drawn, product managers are nothing to you. And there's a conversation going on the table next to you, but you don't give a fuck. Everything's just, fine. You're there, you're doing your work. And then suddenly someone mentions your name or they mention something you're really interested in. Like, let's say you're Amy Hoop, you're working away, and this girl just says, oh, have you heard of cat wigs? Suddenly she's like, what the fuck? I love cat wigs. And this shows us something really interesting about how our brain works and how our brain kind of handles attentional filtration. And that's that it's constantly analyzing. You mightn't be aware of what was happening any time before that person said your name or mentioned something you were interested in. Maybe if someone asked you, hey, what were they talking about? You'd say, I don't know. I wasn't listening. But if that was the case, if you were truly just not aware or not processing that in any way, how would you know, oh shit, that's something I'm interested in? And the brain is doing something that I think is like not super intuitive, but also really cool in that it's analyzing the environment around us and it's deciding what should be and what should not be kind of brought to the front of our mind, should be brought to our attention. I think that's really interesting. We'll see some examples a bit later of how that plays out. That startle reflex is really important. It keeps us alive. If that startle, instead of the fella dropping the coffees or whatever, if that was like a bear that wanted to eat your face, you would be pretty annoyed if your brain wasn't going like, the bear, the face, like get the fuck away. And that leads us to what I think is a very erudite conclusion around how our brain works and it evolves. It's that the vast majority of mental processes evolved over a time when bears were trying to eat our whole fucking faces. Our brains evolve slower than society and industry and technology in general. The world is fucking noisy and we are not equipped to deal with it because we're still running away from bears. A distraction has a cost. And that cost comes in the form of mental resources. The brain is part of a living organism. Like all bodily function, it needs energy to work. The more that your brain does something, say switches attention to one thing and back to another, the more that costs energy. Think of it almost like a muscle. It's not actually like factually correct, but if you think about like going to the gym, you're doing a certain amount of reps on something, at some point you get tired, or you're going on a run, at some point you have no resources to continue doing the exercise and you need a big rest. Brain works essentially the same kind of way. We need sleep, we need to come prepared for the torrent of modern life. This is really shit, don't do this. But notifications are our way of essentially saying to our device, hey, I care if something happens here. Please distract me if it does. So naturally, all these amazing companies decided that the best way to use notifications and distractions was to market to you non-fucking stop or farm engagement because you haven't clicked the button in the app for a couple of days. And we don't like that. So no one trusts notifications anymore. They're complete clusterfuck, irrelevant shite. Something should be done about this, but it makes people money, so fuck us. This is a good one. Modals, everyone fucking loves these. I don't really need to talk about how bad these are because it's been a meme since fucking 2000 and God knows what. But here's me trying to get an answer to what clicker to use. And as you can see, it was a shit answer. Don't buy a Nintendo Switch controller to use as a clicker. Otherwise, you'll be stuck smashing an arrow key all day. But you can't really see that there because there's a full screen takeover to tell me that they care about my privacy. And because they care about my privacy, they want to snitch on me to 183 different companies. Cool. I've closed that. Great. Oh, there's a little bit of an answer behind there. But no, Quora wants me to use my Google account to sign in. Okay, let's make that go away. Okay, now I can get a little bit. Oh, there's a continue reading. Oh, there's a fixed thing at the bottom that also wants my attention. That's it. Fuck modals. You probably don't need a modal. Modals are a red flag, and we've kind of normalized this idea of, hey, we've got this really great interface, but we need to put some more information in it. Oh, just use a fucking modal. No, revisit your information architecture. Modals are the devil. That's all. So the brain's part of a living organism. Like all bodily functions, it needs energy to work, and part of that, and something that really exposes like what's interesting about that is theories around energy conservation and the brain's role in conserving mental resources. Essentially, we work on biases and heuristics a lot more than we'd like to admit. We don't do deep analysis very often. And we engage in something called satisficing. We look for things that are good enough and readily available. Good enough has a higher or lower bar depending on your situation, but essentially we're not performing cost-benefit analysis of every decision we make. Like I didn't lay all my fucking socks out this morning and be like, I just put them on. So we don't like this term, but you might be aware of dark patterns. As a community and an industry, we've pushed more towards deceptive patterns. And these are things that capitalize on our brain's innate desire to work at this low effort bias stage and not perform deep analysis. A little side note on this one. If you publicly tweet about how bullshit the word dark patterns is, I'm trying to promote a better, more inclusive term. The person who invented dark patterns might email the sales team of the company that you work for and try and get you fired. And as proof of why you should be fired, send them a tweet where you call Donald Norman a boomer gobshite. That might happen because hell have no fury, like a white man in tech receiving mild criticism. Yeah, shit, that is a menacing fucking clock. I don't know if anyone's seen that. It's just huge. Telling me I've got 20 minutes left. I'm going to have to speed up. It's a fun game. It's called Spot the fucking download button. This is shit because we don't want to perform this deep analysis, and we've got like 3 or 4 buttons here that could be the right one, but only one of them is. Shit game. Don't play it. 1 primary action, please. 2 of them are adverts. 1 of them's probably for fucking malware or fucking weird porn. This is just melty behavior. Don't do this. Interface hijacking. This is really shit too. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but it's fucking hard to find a job in tech right now. And one of the places you go to do that is LinkedIn. Fucking God save us all. But what LinkedIn does in this really difficult job market is it just lets people put fucking messages into your inbox the same way you'd get a job fucking inquiry or something like that. So I've not blared this guy's name out because it's funny because his name's Jack and it's got hijacking in there. Everyone just noticed that. But if you're going to do that, you're going to go on a fucking slide that 6 people are going to watch on YouTube. I've got a good solution for this. An elegant design solution. Check out more. This is like Reddit is fucking just an unbelievable place for better or worse, but this is quite a fun subreddit if you do want to check out more deceptive patterns. But shit tech isn't always deceptive. Sometimes it's not looking to deceive us, but to manipulate us. And a lot of people are very transparent about how they want to do that. So deceptive patterns look to kind of like just prey on those biases and heuristics and the fact that we want to make quick decisions and use that against us. But there are other ways that shit tech uses our brains against us. And one of those is motivation. To look at motivation, we have to look at behaviorism a little bit. So behaviorism is mostly outdated now, but it kind of treated the mind as a closed box. That kind of information comes in, we react to shit in our environment, and we do something as a result of that. It's largely debunked. It's used in very niche applications, like some areas of cognitive behavioral therapy and abusing dogs to make them do what you want them to do. So I usually do a whole spiel on behaviorism and why it's shit, but I've kind of like really tried to save time on this. Pavlov's a prick. He just abused dogs to see how they responded to reward. Skinner's also a prick. Skinner basically said, what if Pavlov, but with pigeons? Electrified pigeons? I am good science, man. And these 2 science people were the dopamine boys. They basically looked at dopamine in relation to rewards and put forth theories around motivation and conditioning. Pavlov's dog, if anyone knows it, was classical conditioning, and it showed us how stimulus that precedes a reward can prompt us to do work when we see that stimulus again. Essentially, rang a bell and made a dog eat and I think he's a fucking genius. Cool, go you. Skinner evolved on that with operant conditioning, which basically, amongst other things, showed that if you vary the rewards and bring chance into the equation, that people can be compelled to do things more drastically. And this is how we got casinos and slot machines. Nice work, mate. But this is all reward seeking. It's not about pleasure. Shut the fuck up about dopamine. It's not that important. It's just about compulsion. So naturally, social media fucking loved that. We really fucked social media when we turned it into a big conditioning festival full of engagement farming. I miss forums and Neopets. That was real social media, and I sound fucking old. And this naturally evolved to habit-forming products, and that was the eventual culmination of compulsion in design. It was basically fetishizing compulsion. All of these are Western models, and I do not say that lightly. So, self-determination theory. This was a big light bulb for me when I kind of started reading and researching about it. And I think it's much more suited to how we design. And it's a theory on intrinsic motivation. It's motivation that comes from emotive internal aspects, not this extrinsic motivation that we kind of try and latch onto when it comes to motivation and compulsion in tech. It's rooted in humanism, which encourages to adopt a more holistic view of human behavior, see a person as a whole thing with external and internal influences, no more closed boxes. And there's three major aspects to self-determination theory. So there's autonomy, feeling in control of our behaviors and our goals, and being able to act with volition in our environment. There's competence, so getting better at something, progressing, being more capable, and overcoming meaningful challenges. And there's relatedness, which is a sense of belonging, of being looked after and looking after others. Paloma Medina is fucking awesome, and she has this kind of extension or expansion on self-determination theory that she kind of does more in the context of teams and team building, but it's called the biceps model. And that says that people are most intrinsically motivated and do better work and achieve better things if they have belonging, improvement, choice, equality, predictability, and significance. So how do we go about designing for self-determination? It's a much more healthier approach to designing around motivation. So the first step for me is to embrace nonlinearity, creating products where people can show and experience control, where they can act with volition to set their own goals and achieve them. Video games are great at this, and they're getting a lot better. The latest Zelda is fucking great, and that's just full of stuff in the environment that you can interact with, that interacts with other stuff in the environment, and you can do fucking incredible shit in it. Even things like Minecraft and Roblox and stuff like that, I know they get a bit of a bad rep, but some of the shit people make in those games is incredible. And they're just fucking around. They're not really doing what the game necessarily intended them to do. We got these 14-year-old kids making the fucking Sistine Chapel out of cubes. It's pretty impressive. We see this more closely in our day-to-day in things like Figma and FigJam. So we get this infinite canvas where, yes, there are things we can put into it, and yes, they are constrained in some way. But we have these tools to work in that really give us kind of control and volition, and we can go about stuff kind of however we feel, and then we use them to create linear experiences that people just go through lists of data, which is cool, go us. We don't need to see all that. I assume you know what an infinite canvas looks like. Amy is great at this in a much more kind of condensed and simplified approach. So essentially, you have to-dos and you have a calendar, and you can fucking drag a to-do onto your calendar. I like that. I mean, that's really nice. Acknowledge progression. When we want to show mastery in something, we want to show improvement. Acknowledging progression along the way is great. Duolingo is really good at this. The badges that we see in Duolingo and the progress that we see, people often erroneously kind of say that they're the rewards of Duolingo. That's not really true. The reward has already happened. The reward is the progress. The reward is learning a language, becoming more competent at something. These are more markers along the way. It's basically saying, hey, you did something good that you wanted to do. Let's kind of commemorate that with a weird serial killer owl doing a dance. I want to encourage folks to shift your thinking around linearity and around kind of how this plays out in your process. And one of the ways to do that is to move away from this kind of shit So I'm sure a lot of you have seen kind of a user flow that looks like this. It's very linear. There's a few little branching things, and eventually everyone's fucking happy. It's a bit of a happy path. It's not useless, but it's not enough. I think instead we should look towards key moments. I'll talk a little bit more about this again later when I try and wrap things up. But if you do want to grab that from the toolkit, please do. But essentially, we want to look at these key moments that people can experience, these events that can happen, not necessarily in any specific order, but things that can happen within an environment. So we move on now to how systems work. And this is really important because our work is a reflection of the systems with which and within which it's created. Go me, I can read off a slide. But what systems kind of do we need to care about? So your organization is a system. And the things that happen within your organization and how it's set up dictate the kind of work that you can do and the outcomes that you can expect. So things like, how do you make money? How do you get to market? I'm going to really quickly, because I'm running out of time-ish, do a book giveaway. Stephanie very kindly pointed out that some of you are willing to shout out the answer to a question with the hopes of receiving a book, so I'm going to try the same. What's the most important job in the history of Uber? Driver. Good. Keep trying. Sorry? Oh.
Executive. Passenger.
Passenger. No? Come on. Anyone? Job?
Control the music. In the car. Lawyer.
Do you say lawyer? Yeah, close. Close enough. Lobbyist? Yeah. Uber wouldn't exist without exploiting legal loopholes that dodge regulations that taxi drivers in the cities that Uber took over had to work under, and it lets them exploit low-income workers in the gig economy. So lawyer is close enough. Lobbyists making sure that the law doesn't change in line with how Uber make their decisions. So the moral there is if you dress up like a tech company, you can do whatever the fuck you want. How you make decisions will impact the work that you do. And how you build shit will impact the work that you do. What's your tech stack like? Is it nice and neat, offline first, very easy to make nice, fast user experiences? Or is it a bit legacy, a bit of a monolith, and really difficult to kind of build modern experiences? Your product is a system. And within that, you have your system model. So your product has an underlying system model. And this is essentially an abstraction of how your entire product works. It's usually quite technical, and it's usually the closest model we have to the reality of that system. System models often look like schemas for the engineering folks here. On top of that, we have a designed model. So that's the abstraction of the system model. And it's usually a simplification or a reframing of that system model. And then the flip side to a designed model is a mental model. And mental models are, they essentially represent what a person believes is possible within the designed model that you have presented them. So within your interface, what can I do? A lot of mental models are based around predictability as well. The mind loves predictability. This is a design model that leads to a mental model that I'm sure we're all familiar with. When you have a computer in front of you, there's not like a tiny filing system inside it, right? That's constantly having things organized. It's just kind of bytes on a hard drive. But some genius decided that, hey, like people are used to files and folders from the real world back when we used paper and shit. Let's create a designed model of that to sit on top of this really complex model of data storage. And it's a really kind of abstracted and I think really, really beautiful way of thinking about data storage. It could have been completely different. This is also a design model for a very similar experience, directory traversal, right? I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with that. This is still an abstraction, but it's a lot closer to the underlying system model. It's more complex, but it's potentially more powerful. I'm sure there's folks who have not opened a Finder window in fucking years and they do everything in a terminal. And we see it in development all the time as well. You know, we might work on a framework that sits on top of JavaScript, that sits on top of whatever the fuck the browser does, that's eventually compiled to assembly. We work in varying degrees away from a system model, and we often sacrifice power for convenience or abstraction. So how do we look at our product as a system? One thing I love is OOUX, object-oriented UX. It's kind of founded and championed by Sophia Prater. I'm a piece of shit, I can't pronounce words. But this is really good for complex nonlinear products. And it's also really a good approach for if you're building larger sites with multiple taxonomies and really complex information architectures. And it essentially evolves around nouns and verbs. So if we want to build out an OOUX model of our product system, we start by documenting our objects. Look at the nouns that you use when you describe the product that you're building. Then you describe their data. Then you describe what can be done against that object. So if we're building a music app and we have a song, say, as one of our nouns, we start building out the data in there. So maybe it has a title, maybe it has a runtime, an artist, an album that it's part of. And then we look at what we can do against that thing. Maybe we can play it, maybe we share it with other people, maybe we add it to a playlist. If you do this for all the nouns or the objects within your product system, you get something that looks like this, which it looks very straightforward, but it gives you something really cool. This is what it looks like in the toolkit if you do want to grab that. But it gives us conceptual components. It gives us these things that we know at some point we're going to have to design. But hey, we're building a music app. We need to design what a song looks like. We need to design what a song looks like in the context of an album, what it looks like in the context of a playlist. And these are really just kind of standalone objects, standalone components within our understanding of the system we're designing on top of. And they're unstructured. People jump to architecture and to hierarchy far too quickly. And this gives us a really nice, flat, unstructured view of all the things we might need to design, we might need to build, and that people might need to interact with. And it lets us start forming these organic relationships. How does a song fit into an album? How does a song fit into a playlist? How does an album fit into a song? This can really help you kind of push the boundaries of what you used to see in products in your niche. Again, going back to Amy, because I do think this is a lovely little interaction, but that relationship between a to-do and an event in your calendar mightn't seem intuitive at first, but if you're like me and you need everything in front of you when you're doing everything, this is a really nice mental model that kind of wouldn't exist if this kind of fuzzy relationship between a calendar and a to-do list didn't exist. OOUX is a living document. As you iterate, as you evolve your understanding of what you're building, go back to it and update it. I'm going to go very quickly now, if I can. Your design system, it's got system in the name. It's a system. Amy Hoop's going to tell us how to kill one. I'm just going to talk about principles. I think everyone gets principles wrong. And the question I want folks to ask when it comes to principles in your design system is, can they help you make better decisions? This is a shit principle. This is just like, yeah, of course it has to be fast. It has to be good. It has like whatever. This doesn't really tell you anything, and it doesn't help you make a decision. Something like this, performance over aesthetics, is much better. It tells you what you're sacrificing in the name of what you are pushing towards. And it gives us this idea of hierarchical principles as well. They should clearly state what you push for and what you sacrifice to achieve that. Watch this talk by Jeremy Keefe, because he's a lot better than me. Have an above all else. So it could be accessibility. It probably should be accessibility if we're being honest, but it could be quality. But this is something that you will not sacrifice for. And all your other principles after that, if they don't adhere to your above all else principle, then don't fucking do it. Don't just make shit up. Don't just go to like Polaris and be like, oh, they're cool principles. That must apply to the shit that we're building. It probably doesn't. Back your principles up by research. What are people looking for when they go to use your product? And how can you build principles that actually serve those needs? I'm veering right off now into we live in a society discourse, but let's go. The vast majority of us are going to be working under capitalism. If we work in a for-profit, if we work in SaaS, we have to acknowledge the fact that we exist and our work exists within a capitalist system. Capitalism is exploitative, it's extractive, and it's oppressive. And the only truly ethical design under capitalism is design that tries to subvert it. Government oppression is something that affects the work that we do in ways that we might not expect. Social media being used to spy on citizens is very common. Governments shutting down infrastructure services when protests happen is also very common. And we should be aware of how bad actors can use the technology that we make. This is happening a lot. This isn't fucking fun, but how can propaganda be spread through the tools that you're making? What laws and regulations impact the work that you can do and protect the people that you might face, that might live in your problem space? What access to healthcare and welfare do people generally have? You know, are people struggling for basic physical and mental health care? Is affordable housing at an all-time low in the middle of a cost of living crisis because landlords are parasites? And this is absurd that this is even a fucking phrase that like has made it into our collective lexicon, but the fact that it costs to live, that's fucked. But if people are struggling, how different does your product look? How different does your organization look? For some people, if you're building luxury stuff, you could fucking disappear because people aren't buying luxury shit anymore. People are trying to survive. Maybe it empowers people more because you are building it from a mindful starting point. And there's a big push now around designing from the margins, which essentially says look at the most vulnerable, the most impacted people in your problem space and work inwards from that. If you can solve problems for the people who are most likely to struggle day to day, people with disabilities, people with cognitive impairments, people with neurodevelopmental disorders, that will make you a better designer and it will make your products more robust. Systems interact with each other. I'm going to skip that. That's it. Systems, not silos. Right, I'm going to do a quick run through of what I think makes mindful products to hopefully tie all that bullshit together. So they limit noise. Now, noise is contextual, but its impact is broad and distractions come at a cost. Framing something irrelevant as important is just really shitty behavior. Think about being subtractive first. Don't default to adding stuff to your UI while you're iterating on it. Think of what you can remove. Think about how your information architecture might change if you forget about something, but you're halfway through a design. Don't just slap a fucking modal on it. Don't just default to popovers. Go back to the IA, rethink it. IA Writer, which is not about information architecture, but it's just by a company called IA, is another really atomic example of this. Like this does what our brain does for us, right? This is focus mode within IA Writer. The thing that you're writing or editing is really up there at the forefront, and all the stuff that you might not care about is kind of zoned out and it's a little bit more transparent, and you can just focus on this thing that matters the most to you. That does what our brains do, and that's really nice. I did want to kind of touch on simplification, but where I've landed on with this is adequate complexity. So some systems are more complex than others, and some scenarios call for designed models that are closer to the system model. If you think about the directory traversal example, that's a lot more powerful and a lot more complex than dragging and dropping folders and files. Meet people where they are. Don't ask people for more than they can give. Integrate into people's lifestyles, understand their lifestyles, and don't try and disrupt them. Know when to innovate. Don't just try something new for the sake of trying something new. If you're building, I don't fucking know, write an app, you probably don't need to innovate around login. Just do what people expect. Conform to conventions. Allow for autonomy where possible or necessary. Create systemic environments. Not everything needs to be autonomous and rewarding and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes we just need to shut the fuck up. Sometimes people just want to pop in, do a job, close the phone and cuddle their pets. Not everything needs to be sticky, shitty word, or habit forming. Learn when you shouldn't be talking to people. Learn when you can just go away and people will start using your product when they need it. If you want to talk more about this, I really like meeting new people. I really love talking about this stuff, in case you can't tell. until my social battery runs out, at which point I'll probably just go away, FaceTime my dog, and have a Mackey's in the bath. Key takeaways. Buy the book. Fuck distractions. Fuck notifications. Fuck modals. Fuck linearity. Fuck behaviorism. Fuck Pavlov. Fuck Skinner. And fuck the Tories. Stay safe. Look out for each other. Love you. Bye. You want to get that away?